Okay. Hi.
I
Okay. I'm excited and I'm a little scared, but we'll move on. Um, so this is the first video in English that I'm doing for my channel, and I'm glad I'm doing it with you because it's always nice to have a friend over and to talk about something that's interesting for the both of us. And I really appreciate you as a scientist as well, so it's nice to talk about these things. Um, so maybe we should start by introducing ourselves, because I'm guessing people who are not subscribers are going to watch this just because it's in English. So, do you want to start?
yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Elliot. I'm originally from France, but I'm living in Norway, and I'm working right now as an engineer in parasitology. So the study of parasites, and I'm also really concerned about question related with climate. So and especially how is our relationship like human with the nature from different aspects. So yeah, when we started to exchange about Corona, I felt that maybe there were some thing that we should talk that connect those two topics.
Great. So, I'm John. I'm Greek. I live in Athens. I'm a pharmacist. Um, I've worked in the scientific department of a company that was importing and producing its own dietary supplements. I was a member of the R&D team. And for the most part, I've been working in a community pharmacy and doing my master's in geriatrics and chronic disease management. And yeah, coronavirus is a hot topic these days. So I guess the connection to climate change is something that only just a few people have touched. Hi. Hi. So in just a few weeks' time, maybe it was a couple months, we've noticed important changes in the climate, maybe above the areas of China and Italy. We've seen reduced levels of CO2, and we've seen animals going away from their natural habitats and entering cities and abandoned cities and walking around. I've seen it in Athens, actually. Um, I've seen it happen. It was really interesting to me because I think there is an obvious connection between the pandemic that we're facing now and climate change that people we ignore for the most part. And uh, I think this is the time to address it because we've been hearing this a lot. Like, why is this the right time to talk about climate change? I think this is the ideal time to talk about climate change. And before we start talking about it, I'd like to just mention like a very hot topic on misinformation that's been going around, and it's that the novel coronavirus was created in a lab, which I think scientists have been very um, opinionated about, and they have explained why it could not be created in a lab. And what they've said is that mainly the structure of the spikes, of the protein spikes, and the whole backbone of the virus is so complex and it's so new that there's no technology to support this. There's no way that scientists could create this. And I think there's been a lot of confusion because we had viruses that were created in a lab like a few years ago, and people confused the novel coronavirus to these viruses. And the closest relative to the novel coronavirus is actually a virus that came from bats. But if you um, if you take that virus and you put it against the novel coronavirus, you can see that it has like a million differences. Like it would take 20 years of mutation to reach this level that we're facing now. So this is completely different, and I think people should understand that this is just the result of natural selection, which is mainly the process where organisms with favorable traits, like the ones that are better adapted to their environment, are the ones more likely to survive and reproduce, which is actually the central concept of adaptation. It all comes down to adaptation and evolution, which is an ongoing process that we're trying to figure out, but we're not sure how it goes on yet. Like we try to study the epigenetics, for example, among other things. Evolution comes change, and if we can't escape it, at least we can delay it or be prepared for it. What do you think?
No, I think it was quite, at the beginning, I really thought that it was only a few people that thought about it. But then when I saw that in the social media, it was quite, everywhere, it started to be really like, I started to question myself why people will believe that such virus can only be created by humans. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's my opinion, because so I may be wrong, so people are free to comment what they believe, but maybe the explanation is that people don't really realize what is our actual relationship with nature, but also in particular with the pathogens and epidemics. And since human history, we have experienced different type of epidemics, and I think we have had like 4 epidemiologic transitions. So, for example, the first one took place, I think it was 10,000 years ago, when from gather hunters we started to stay at one place and started to grow our food. And then we attract animals and we increase our interaction with wild animals. And scientists show that more than 60% of non-infectious diseases are zoonotic, which means transmitted by animals. And among those 60%, I think it was 75% of those are actually transmitted by wildlife. So it means that in the wild, we have animals that contain some viruses or parasite that actually can be transmitted to human. And also, it's quite crazy to imagine that, for example, with coronavirus, who estimated in March that its fatality rate was only less than 4%, and you can compare it with the Ebola that is 50%, and Ebola has never been questioned as is it something created in lab, if I'm not wrong. So it really proved that in the wild we have time bombs that we don't want to activate.
Exactly. It could happen anytime again in the future.
Yeah, and it's the thing that it's not because we don't see something that is not there. And living in cities, we actually have very little ideas about what's going on in the nature. So, yeah, that's something that we have to now we have to worry. Yeah.
Yeah, and the more we destroy natural habitats to expand cities, for example, and the more that we come in contact with wildlife, yeah, it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, I think it's maybe where we can actually wonder why right now is the right time to talk about climate change and climate action. Many people actually, I mean, in the social media, we mostly talk about Corona, which is understandable. Because it's what most of the people are facing, but it's really dangerous to actually forget about climate. And I think it's not like, I don't want to be like the hippie person that's knock to the door, because we don't talk enough about climate. But it's also because, since what we said before, there is a strong connection between pandemics and climate. And of course, now we have to focus about fighting these pandemics. But on Earth, we are almost 8 billion people, and we have some are actually actively fighting for corona. So we talk about doctors, nurses, people cleaning, because it's really important to keep a good hygiene. Like, I mean, you have like a lot of people that are actually really involved, but a huge majority of us are actually staying at home because we are doing the right thing. We don't want to spread it. But how about actually using this time to think about what we could do regarding climate action? And for example, Inger Andersen, which is the United Nations Rated for Environment chief, really explained that in the future, if right now we keep the same lifestyle, because like right now, of course, everyone is thinking that once we are done with the corona, we will get our life back to normal. But sadly, it's maybe not the right thing to think. Of course, once it's done, enjoy, go outside, meet families, travel a little bit. But we also need to think about the future. And the coronavirus, as I said, has a very low fatality rate compared to many others. And we have to make sure that this situation that we are experiencing will help us to know that it should not happen, or we'll do our best that it's not happening again. And for example, by prevented global warming, it's something that we are saying all the time. And actually, it's good that if we are doing it, we can also avoid to have new pandemics. Because with global warming, there is like some habitat that get destroyed. And when habitats get destroyed, the animals that live there just move. So we end up actually maybe having to share our own habitat with animals from other places. And this goes actually to the second thing, that we have to make sure that we are, we'll make sure that it's happening. It's also protecting natural habitats. So all those areas where you have specific species that are living, because as we said, in the wild, we have like those bombs, and we don't want that it happens. So maybe let's just leave it there and not going there. And it's the same with wildlife trade, because in China, for example, everyone is pointing out, oh yeah, all those wildlife markets, it's the reason that we have corona. So it's one of the reasons, because yes, by those markets, we increase the probability that we interact with wild animals, but we have like wildlife trades in many countries, and also we import from countries. So I believe country that actually imports somehow wildlife animals also have to take some responsibility, because we take animals from an habitat, and it can travel for 100 or 1,000 kilometers. So you just imagine like the situation how during the transportation. So just imagine the level of stress. And as you may imagine, the more you're stressed, the more your defense immune defense, so defenses against parasites or viruses is very low. So you just arrive in new areas at I don't know how far from the initial place, with probably plenty of pathogens.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important, and also it's good that we don't forget that the nature, it's not only, it doesn't look only nice, and it's not because we have to do it, but they also have this what is called it's called ecosystem services. So for example, the forest or the ocean, that they are healthy forests, healthy ocean. They are the one that actually help us to turn CO2 into oxygen or to stock the CO2. The wetland, it's where actually they play a huge role in, for example, prevented tsunami or floods. And so, I mean, everything is interconnected, and yeah.
We've talked about the past.
Yeah.
How these things have happened before, and we've talked about the present, that we are facing a deadly virus. We are facing a pandemic that we need to prioritize, and there are people like health scientists who are frontline facing this, and the ones that are staying home need to think about the future, and this is maybe what we can talk about next. How to prevent this from happening again in the future, because we, above all else, we need to stay positive and optimistic about the future. So maybe we can figure out some ways that we can, things that we can incorporate into our daily lifestyle, so that we can make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future. We live in different countries, so things are, I guess, they're pretty much different here than they're over there in Norway. So how are you holding up?
I feel like maybe I don't know if I can say it. I feel like I'm kind of quite lucky, because here we are a big country with very few people, and we started pretty bad, because I think at the beginning, when they compared the number of coronavirus cases and per capita, we were like third or fourth after like China and Iran, if I'm not wrong. But we didn't have a proper lockdown, but people were the people that could work from home did it. Schools were closed, and we are practicing the social distancing, which is maybe easier in the Nordic than maybe in Greece, because we already have this 1 meter space that we need around us. So we just needed to add 1 more meter. And personally, I think I was really worried the first 2 weeks, because I guess like many of us, we don't really know what's going on, and it's new, it's scary. So, you know, we can make the worst scenarios in our heads. So it was really not fun for 2 weeks. But I try to understand like about this virus, and also I did something that was really hard. It was like not checking my social media for maybe 3 days. So it was really hard because it's, you know, you wake up, you want to check Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And also, you know, since it was, you know, everything was moving fast, you had this FOMO, fear of missing out information about, okay, what's going on. But it really helped. And now with this distance, I can also see that, of course, if we could have avoided Corona, it would have been better, because I don't know how many people died and people got sick, and the people that lost people that died. But I feel like regarding what we discussed about the fatality rates, you know, we could have had something worse apparently. So it's maybe a good wake up call, because of course we get affected, but maybe it might help us related to climate change, because I know that, for example, from a psychological aspect, it was very interesting to see how fast we and collectively we act. Like every country is like started to more and less follow the same rules, except some countries that we might not mention. But and it's it's interesting at the same time that, for example, for climate change, that it's something that we know much more before. We are really struggling to respect those Paris Agreement that are supposed to be an agreement that should help the future generation to avoid the worst in terms of climate change. So because apparently we are not so good to think about tomorrow, like tomorrow in a couple of years, and especially when in abstract. So what I thought it might be, if we manage to convince people about the link between climate and these epidemics, maybe people could keep this state of mind. And of course, when the pandemic is over, we not being in state of crisis. Some environmentalists want us to panic, and maybe in some need, the one that don't care. But at least, keeping the state of mind that, if we want to solve this problem, it has to be collective. And also, I will just briefly talk about it because it's not my field. But if we talk about economy, from what I understood and read, we don't know how the economy will be when it will be done. We know that it won't be so good, but we don't know how it will be. So my impression is, okay, we will have to put a lot of works to fix it. So, we can choose to try to fix the former or like actual economical system that we know is not meant to last. Or we can actually, since we have to somehow rebuild it, maybe doing what we were supposed to do before, which is the green transition. So I am of course I'm worried about the future somehow, but I also feel a bit excited because this situation really, the Corona situation also shown that how people could work together and expressing empathy and compassion. So I hope that it will we won't forget about it, and we can use it for the next challenge, that is climate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we can look at climate change as a chronic disease, and maybe everything else is just a symptom of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everything is interconnected. And
okay, so each and every one of us has a part to play, has a role to play in all this. So on an individual level, what can we actually do? What elements can we incorporate into our daily lifestyle that will help even a little to reverse the whole situation? That was a question.
Okay. We can do a lot of stuff, and it doesn't need to be living in the forest and eating grass. It's really depends on the individual level. So I think what we have seen with the Corona situation and all those fake news, I think it's really important to when I say educate ourselves, you don't need to study everything about biology, but just try to pick up stuff that maybe you're interested to know it works related with climate, environment, and it might help to actually be even more critical when you see some news, because of course, sadly, you have fake news. You have what we call greenwashing, which is especially made by oil companies, or also some politicians that actually they will try to explain that what they do is good for the environment, and many people will believe it. And so it seems very strange, but I think it's the most important. It's being critical and not trusting everything that you see, especially when the sources are unclear. And while the other part is what probably everyone is saying, it's like a more sustainable lifestyle. And again, I think it's better to do a little, and we all do it, than trying to do the most. So for example, you're of course not eating meat is in terms of CO2 emission is the best, but not eating meat one day during the week while you eat meat every day is already a difference. And also, we saw it, we are seeing it now, but buying local is also great. But with Corona, it's what actually it's happening in many parts, maybe not in big cities, but in smaller places. And it's like stupid things like, okay, taking public transportation instead of cars, or if it's close, why not walking if it's a good weather? And of course, not telling you, okay, don't take the plane, don't travel, but instead of going often on weekend abroad, and maybe going less often, but being more into the moment. For example, of course, keep taking selfie to show where you are, but just try to say, okay, right now I'm in this place, so enjoy it, because you take the selfie, you go back home and you will check your selfie like, oh yeah, it was so nice, I want to go back. So and yeah, the most important is like, trying to think about how you can reduce instead of thinking how you can be perfect. And maybe it's what is also important is, well, it's more political, but trying to choose leaders that you believe can be good for the future, and not just you think that is good for the short term, because in many situations in the world, we notice that it's maybe not the best things that we did. So yeah, it's mostly, I don't know. Again, people can suggest.
If you could just sum it all up in one sentence, what would you say?
I think with what we are experiencing right now, it's more than obvious that we can make a choice. So either a future of hope and opportunities, or one of fears and uncertainties.
This is it. This is the video. I hope everyone who watched it enjoyed it, and feel free to comment under the video and tell us about what you think. And if you do feel that there is indeed a connection between the coronavirus and climate change, or maybe what you can do to help, you can also subscribe. If you can speak Greek, you can watch my other videos. I don't know, maybe. And I'm really glad that we did this. I really enjoyed it.
So yeah, hopefully see you for another video.
Yeah,
video
sure.
collaboration.
Yay! And maybe you should start your own channel.
Yeah, I should. I think it seems fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's not negative. It's just, okay, you have the options, and you want a chocolate or you want poop. So it's not negative. It's just make your choice.
Poop is not negative.
Well, if I say you want chocolate and you want poop, it's assumed that you have to eat it. So I think you will, unless you have some fetish, you will say the chocolate. Or unless you have a deadly allergy to chocolate, you're not going to choose poop. So it's not necessarily negative, but it's just you have an obvious choice, and it's a choice can be. It's not like if I kill you unless you jump from the 10th floor. Here it's not. You think you have the choice, but technically you don't have the choice. No, maybe I should have not said that. No, yeah. But